Welcome to another special edition of Pressing Questions. My name is Lee Sackett. I am your host with Brooks Running, and today we have the most specialist of guests, Rachel Ebbers, who is the Director of Marketing and Corporate Communications with Fleet Feet PNW, part of the Wade Empire. So Rachel, do you want to tell the people where you're at, who you are, what you're doing, a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am based out of Portland, Oregon. I have been for a while. I have been working in the running specialty industry since 2013. I started my work with Fleet Feet actually at Fleet Feet Seattle with Brian Morrison, who I love dearly, and now work for Wade and Julie Pinnell, and I'm really proud to work for them. And they let me work from Portland, which is great because it means that I can be near my family or actually live in the same house as my family and still work for them even though they're based out of Spokane.
The reason we wanted to get Rachel on this thing is because everyone's world is kind of turned upside down right now, and we all deal with the current intensity and we all grapple with it in a different, unique way. Rachel has a very different set of responsibilities than I do because Rachel is a new mom. And being a new mom and having a responsibility of being a first-time mother is intense on its own without global pandemic. The first thing I want to ask you, your expectations of how to still be yourself and still have identity being a new mother, what did you expect and what did you assume? And then what is your current reality of what the first couple months is like? Where did you think you'd be at and where are you at?
Oh man, that's a loaded question. So I am 34 and, I guess I think in binaries. So I break people down into two camps, people that long for children and have sort of that drive, and then people who are reluctant or decide not to. And I would fall into the reluctant, I almost am not sure I want to do this, pretty ambivalent about it camp. I think that both are super valid. So I want to say anything that I say under the premise that I think a lot of women are really struggling to have children. And for me, it's kind of the opposite where I was nervous about it. My identity was always kind of founded and rooted in my work, and my work was tied to running. So I was really, really nervous thinking about getting pregnant. I was nervous because I was nervous about losing my identity.
Yeah.
I was nervous about what it would mean for my job. When my husband and I started walking down this road, when we got married, I had hoped that one of us would become less ambivalent about having children in either direction. One of us would reach a conviction like, I really want to have kids or I really don't. And so we decided together that we were ready to have a family. So this time last year, my baby was like the size of a peanut.
Yeah.
And now she's 6 months old. So I kind of marvel at that. But I guess the reason that I want to talk to other women is that I think when you're a runner or when you're career driven or you really find a lot of value in that identity, that having a child it felt really daunting to me. It felt almost like a compromise. I was worried about resenting my child. I was worried about resenting my husband for wanting a kid. I was kind of worried about what it would mean to go back to running afterwards. I was worried that I would lose. I think that there's something really, when you are a runner, it is, I think, really scary to think about I might lose my body. I might voluntarily completely transform my body and never get it back to the same state again. And it's not like a slow progression of I spent the last 10 years gaining weight. It's no, I'm making a choice that dramatically changes, stretches, warps, does crazy things to my body. It's going to last 10 months. And then I have this recovery period and I have no idea what's going to happen. So I was super apprehensive of that as well.
Of course. Yes. And sidebar, I don't think that it is a emotion or a feeling of vanity. You work in the business of movement and fitness. Your body is tied directly to your performance, directly tied to your ability to do the thing that you like to do. And you went into this knowing that this was going to be an uphill battle after 10 months, like you said, not 10 years.
It's a good thing I live in a hilly neighborhood. No, I mean uphill battle, man. I have two things to say to that.
Yeah, continue it.
One, there is vanity involved, I think. I cared about how much weight I gained, and I think talking about that in real terms is part of the journey, is owning that. that I was worried about getting fat, or I was worried about losing my ability to run at a certain pace because I was a certain weight, and owning that vanity and like kind of confronting it and being like, well, what if it changes? What if my metabolism changes? What if I can't lose the weight? Like all that stuff is really hard to grapple with. Number two is that absolutely identity is caught up in the physical self as well as the spiritual and mental self. And I also got my MFA in poetry before I got involved in running. And so I knew that what I was doing was going to put my idea, like, so for running's always been a salve because it helps people connect their mind back to their body again, or their body back to their mind, their body back to their spirit. Because I think in society we live very disconnected from those two things. Like our bodies, we don't think about in terms of how they might relate to like our mental or spiritual health. So I knew that getting pregnant, and I think I was excited about this, would kind of take that experience to a whole nother level of really trying to connect my heart and my body and what was going on there, and playing with that tension. So that was like an interesting challenge to me. If I thought about it on an intellectual level, I was excited about it. On a really practical and vain level, I was afraid.
Talk about like leaving the comfort. I mean, we're all out of our comfort zones in general right now. You have like 12 different comfort zones and you're like 6 miles away from all. That's super interesting what you said about our current civilization. I mean, the current society we live in, which has its benefits. One of the cons would be our minds are so disconnected from our body. Any ebb and flow that happens with the mental state, people would be surprised how much that's connected to your physical state, and how much little marginal gains can make massive changes in the mind. My next question, which is, do you feel like you had a chemical, spiritual, mental, call it what you will, shift, where when your child was born, were you immediately thinking about exercise and changing your body back for different reasons? Or did work and exercise and everything else, the second you saw your baby's face, did all of that take a back seat to where you're like, I don't need to be a runner anymore? Where are you at with who you used to be?
Yeah, that's a really great question. When my baby first came into the world, it was interesting. My hospital bedroom looked out on Forest Park. And so I was like, one of the things I was doing was visualizing trail running while I was pushing. In the days and weeks, well, there's a lot of ugly business that comes with bearing children, and I had to have surgery on my hemorrhoids. That was like the most painful part of childbirth for me. In the kind of the days after my child came into the world, I longed to move, but it felt really good to rest. Like all I could do was kind of like take care of my baby and work on healing my body. There was like no movement involved. But then once I started moving, I realized how it was the same level of importance that it used to be, but maybe for different reasons. So before I just ran as like a discipline because I'm a disciplined person. And so every time I ran, it tied me to my identity as a disciplined routine person. Now running has nothing to do with discipline. It has nothing to do with routine, actually, because most of the time it's like, okay, I have like these 25 minutes and I don't think she'll fall asleep while I'm running if I'm in the stroller, or like I have these 25 minutes and my husband will give them to me. And so I'm going to go do this before he has to go to work or whatever. But the value to running has changed. It's about kind of working through all my stuff. And it had been about working through my stuff before. But now it's like working through my stuff, but like the end result is not that I just feel like a more disciplined person. The end result is that I feel like I'm a more connected person, which I think is really helpful to hold on to no matter what's going on. So even whether it's the pandemic or whether you've just had a baby, like I'm very convicted. There's a lot of noise in the digital space, lots of people trying to connect. We're trying to connect with our customers too. Like we want people to feel valued. We want to make sure that they can get their running shoes if they need them, if they can afford them. The thing that I've been really convicted of as well is that life still happens. And like my best friend, who's my training partner, is 36 weeks pregnant. She can't change that. She's stuck on the train. And I remember feeling stuck on that train too, but I didn't have a pandemic happening at the same time. And so what I'm really convicted about is that we still need to tell those other experiences. Because if we don't, all we're going to do is fixate on the thing at hand, which is really important and really scary and monumental and like unprecedented and all those are the words that everybody's using. But also, I'm dealing with a 6-month-old and she's doing awesome things. And also, my best friend is pregnant and about to have a baby. And like, what world is that baby going to be born into, and what's her birthing process going to look like? And what I would say about running in that context is that running reconnects us to that idea that life still happens. So to me, it's like that, it's that one thing you can do. I mean, I'm sure other people have other things. Maybe it's cooking, or maybe it's like doing a meditation or something, but it's that thing that reconnects our physical and our spiritual and our mental body again and says, life still happens. Like, all this stuff is crazy. And it was the same with having a baby. It was the same with going through postpartum anxiety. It was like, but if I do this, if I choose to do this, if I show up to do this, life still happens anyway. And that's like a very reassuring feeling.
Rachel, that was such a good answer.
I don't even know if I answered your actual question.
I am the same as you in a sense where running is a discipline. It's your cornerstone. It's how you're programmed. And I think it takes an event or a pregnancy or a massive upheaval in your being to change your programming. Whether you like it or not, life goes on. You are on the train and your programming changed. And you're still yourself. You are existing in this world with a different set of eyeballs than you were 2 years ago. And that was just a recap of what you just said, because that was very moving. How are you balancing all the things that you're balancing, but this time answer it with a focus on your career? Talk to me about, your fitness and your child and your husband and your family, and now balancing 5 things with a career instead of just you and a career.
Well, the thing I always tell my friends when they're like, how's work going? Because I'm like, well, I have a really generous boss. Like, I have a really progressive boss in that he allows me to work part-time from home, trusts me to do my job, values me in that way. So I appreciate that generosity. I kind of think it's BS that women are expected to go back to work after 3 months. I hit such an intense period of postpartum anxiety at 3 months. Maybe it was a hormonal shift or whatever. I think that's incredibly hard. And yet it's the thing that everyone sort of like values and rewards. And I think that's almost like not feminist. Is that like, the best thing you can do for your life? It just feels like it's valued above all other things to me. That was kind of because I was always in a career oriented crowd. They were all like, well, of course you'll go back to work. And won't you be bored if you don't? And I'm like, wait, so isn't my kid alone fascinating enough that if I wanted to do that full time, that is just as valuable? And so I was so made to feel